Hi everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining me today on this deeply personal journey. The story you're about to hear isn't just about dating or heartbreak. It's about rediscovering your worth when someone suddenly makes you feel like you have none. So, if you've ever felt abandoned, confused, or not enough, please know you're not alone. This is I Got Ghosted, my shocking story and road to recovery. The silence was deafening. One moment, Elias and I were laughing over virtual cocktails, planning a weekend getaway to the coast. The next, nothing. My messages went unanswered, his profile vanished from the dating app, and my calls went straight to voicemail. I'd been ghosted. And it wasn't just a casual brush-off. It felt like a seismic shift in my carefully constructed sense of self. It cracked the foundation I spent years building, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew about myself, about relationships, and about the whole damn human experience.
My name is Amelia Hayes, and until the great ghosting of 2024, I considered myself a reasonably well-adjusted human being. I had a good job as a graphic designer, a cozy apartment filled with more plants than furniture, and a tight-knit group of friends who I genuinely loved. I wasn't perfect, of course. I had my insecurities, my anxieties, my occasional existential crises that usually manifested as late-night pizza binges and philosophical debates with my cat, Schrödinger.
But overall, I was happy, content. I felt like I was finally figuring things out. Then came Elias. We matched on SparkMatch, the dating app that promised to connect you with your soulmate, based on a complex algorithm involving your favorite books, your political leanings, and your tolerance for pineapple on pizza. Elias seemed perfect. He was a musician, a talented guitarist with a passion for blues and a ridiculously charming smile that even managed to translate through the pixelated screen of my phone. We bonded over our shared love of obscure indie films, our mutual disdain for reality television, and our surprisingly similar views on the ethical implications of artificial intelligence. Our first date was electric. We met at a cozy jazz club downtown, the kind of place where the music was smooth, the lighting was dim, and the air was thick with the scent of old wood and expensive whiskey. Elias was even more attractive in person, his eyes a warm hazel that seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories. We talked for hours, losing track of time as we delved into everything from our childhood dreams to our biggest fears. He listened intently, making me feel seen and heard in a way that I hadn't experienced in years. He told me about his struggles with performance anxiety, his deep connection to his music, and his complicated relationship with his father. I, in turn, opened up about my creative blocks, my fear of failure, and my lingering grief over the loss of my grandmother. By the end of the night, I was completely smitten. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of romantic dates, passionate kisses, and late-night conversations. We went to art galleries, explored hidden parks, and cooked elaborate meals together in my tiny kitchen. We laughed, we cried, mostly during a particularly moving scene in a documentary about rescued elephants. And we shared our deepest secrets. I felt like I was falling in love, head over heels, with a man who was kind, intelligent, and genuinely cared about me. I started to imagine a future with him, a future filled with music, art, and maybe even a few miniature humans running around. It was a future I hadn't dared to dream of before, a future that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Then, without warning, the music stopped. The lights went out. The future vanished into thin air. Elias simply disappeared. At first, I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe he'd lost his phone. Maybe he was dealing with a family emergency. Maybe he'd been abducted by aliens. Hey, stranger things have happened. I sent him a few texts, just casual check-ins, trying to play it cool. Hey, just wondering how you're doing. Hope everything's okay. Thinking of you. But the messages remained unread, hanging in the digital ether like desperate pleas into a black hole. After a few days of radio silence, panic started to set in. I checked his social media accounts, hoping for some sign of life, some clue as to his whereabouts. But his profiles were eerily inactive, frozen in time like digital mausoleums. I even did a reverse image search on his profile picture, just to make sure he wasn't some kind of catfish imposter. But everything checked out. He was who he said he was. Or at least he seemed to be. As the days turned into weeks, the reality of the situation began to sink in. I had been ghosted. He had vanished without a trace, leaving me with nothing but a gaping hole in my heart and a million unanswered questions swirling in my brain. The initial shock quickly morphed into a burning rage. How dare he treat me like this? How dare he lead me on, make me believe that we had something special, and then disappear without so much as a goodbye? I fantasized about tracking him down, confronting him in public, and unleashing a torrent of righteous fury upon him. I imagined myself delivering a scathing monologue, filled with witty insults and devastating put-downs, that would leave him speechless and humiliated. But deep down, beneath the anger and the resentment, was a much more insidious emotion: shame. I felt ashamed of myself for being so naive, for falling so hard, for believing that I was worthy of love. I started to replay every moment of our relationship in my head, scrutinizing every conversation, every gesture, every lingering look, searching for clues that I had missed, red flags that I had ignored. I convinced myself that I had somehow driven him away, that I was too clingy, too needy, too intense. I became convinced that I was simply unlovable. My confidence, which had already been teetering on the edge of a cliff, plummeted into the abyss. I stopped going out, stopped seeing my friends, stopped doing the things that I loved. I spent my days holed up in my apartment, wallowing in self-pity and rewatching old episodes of Friends because, let's face it, sometimes all you need is a dose of 90s nostalgia to get you through the day. I started to question my abilities, my talents, my entire sense of self-worth. I felt like I was a failure, a fraud, a worthless human being. My friends, bless their hearts, tried their best to cheer me up. They dragged me out for brunch, forced me to go to yoga classes, and even attempted to set me up on blind dates, which, predictably, ended in disaster. They told me that I was amazing, that I was beautiful, that I was worthy of love, but their words felt hollow, like empty platitudes designed to make me feel better, but ultimately failing to penetrate the thick fog of self-doubt that had enveloped my mind. "He's just an idiot, Amelia," my best friend Chloe said one afternoon, as we sat in my apartment surrounded by half-empty wine glasses and crumpled tissues. "He's clearly got some issues he needs to work through. It's not you, it's him." "But what if it is me?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What if I'm just not good enough? What if I'm destined to be alone forever?" Chloe rolled her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous," she said. "You are one of the most amazing people I know. You're smart, you're funny, you're kind, and you have the best taste in shoes. Any guy would be lucky to have you." I managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Chloe," I said. "I appreciate that. But seriously," she continued, "you need to stop dwelling on this. He's not worth it. He's a ghost, literally. Let him stay that way. Focus on yourself, on your happiness, on your future." Chloe's words were helpful, but they weren't enough to completely erase the pain and the self-doubt. I knew that I needed to do more than just listen to my friends' pep talks. I needed to take concrete steps to rebuild my confidence and reclaim my sense of self-worth. And so, I embarked on a journey of self-discovery, a quest to heal my broken heart and rediscover the amazing woman I knew I was deep down inside. The first step: therapy. I had always been skeptical of therapy. I viewed it as something for people who were weak, who couldn't handle their own problems. But after the great ghosting, I realized that I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. So, I swallowed my pride and booked an appointment with a therapist named Dr. Anya Sharma. Dr. Sharma was a warm, empathetic woman with a calming presence and a reassuring smile. She listened patiently as I recounted my story, offering insightful observations and gentle guidance. She helped me to understand that ghosting is a reflection of the ghoster, not the ghostee. It's a cowardly act, a sign of emotional immaturity and a lack of empathy. It's not about me, she explained. It's about him. She also helped me to identify the underlying insecurities and vulnerabilities that had been triggered by the ghosting. I realized that I had been relying on external validation to feel good about myself, seeking approval from others rather than cultivating self-acceptance. I had been placing my worth in the hands of someone else, giving him the power to define me. And when he disappeared, he took my self-worth with him. Dr. Sharma taught me coping mechanisms for dealing with my anxiety and self-doubt. She introduced me to mindfulness techniques, breathing exercises, and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT strategies. She helped me to challenge my negative thoughts and replace them with more positive and realistic ones. She encouraged me to focus on my strengths, my accomplishments, and my unique qualities. She reminded me that I was worthy of love, respect, and happiness. Therapy wasn't a quick fix. It was a slow, gradual process of healing and self-discovery. But with Dr. Sharma's guidance, I began to chip away at the wall of self-doubt that had been holding me back. I started to believe in myself again. I started to see my own worth. The second step, self-care. For years, I had neglected my own needs, putting everyone else's happiness before my own. I had been so busy trying to please others that I had forgotten how to take care of myself. After the ghosting, I realized that I needed to prioritize self-care. I needed to treat myself with the same kindness, compassion, and respect that I would offer to a friend in need. I started small. I began by making sure I got enough sleep, ate healthy meals, and exercised regularly. I took long walks in nature, listened to calming music, and indulged in relaxing baths. I rediscovered my love of reading, spending hours curled up with a good book and a cup of tea. I started to meditate, practicing mindfulness, and learning to be present in the moment. I also started to reconnect with my creative side. I hadn't painted or drawn in years, but I decided to pick up a paintbrush and see what happened. To my surprise, I found that I enjoyed it. It was a way to express my emotions, to release my stress, and to connect with my inner self. I started to take art classes, experimenting with different mediums and techniques. I even started to sell some of my paintings online, which gave me a huge boost of confidence. I also made an effort to spend more time with my friends and family. I realized how much I had isolated myself after the ghosting, cutting myself off from the people who loved and supported me. I started to go out more, attend social events, and reconnect with old friends. I made new friends too, joining a book club and a hiking group. I realized that I wasn't alone, that there were people who cared about me and wanted to be a part of my life. Self-care wasn't just about pampering myself. It was about nourishing my mind, body, and soul. It was about learning to love myself, to accept myself, and to appreciate myself for who I am. It was about building a strong foundation of self-worth that couldn't be shaken by the actions of others. The third step, setting boundaries. One of the biggest lessons I learned from the great ghosting was the importance of setting boundaries. I realized that I had been allowing people to walk all over me, to take advantage of my kindness, and to treat me with disrespect. I had been afraid to say no, afraid to assert my needs, afraid to rock the boat. After the ghosting, I decided that I would no longer tolerate being treated poorly. I started to set clear boundaries in all of my relationships, both personal and professional. I learned to say no to requests that I didn't feel comfortable with. I learned to assert my needs and to communicate my expectations. I learned to stand up for myself and to protect my own emotional well-being. Setting boundaries wasn't easy. It required me to confront my fears, to challenge my beliefs, and to risk upsetting others. But I discovered that it was incredibly empowering. It gave me a sense of control over my own life, a sense of agency that I had never experienced before. I realized that I had the right to be treated with respect, that I deserved to be heard, and that my needs were just as important as anyone else's. I also learned to recognize red flags in potential partners. I realized that Elias had exhibited several warning signs early on in our relationship, signs that I had ignored or dismissed because I was so eager to find love. I learned to pay attention to my intuition, to trust my gut feelings, and to avoid getting involved with people who are emotionally unavailable, manipulative, or disrespectful. Setting boundaries wasn't about being selfish or demanding. It was about protecting my own well-being and creating healthy, respectful relationships. It was about valuing myself enough to say, "This is how I deserve to be treated." The fourth step, embracing vulnerability. Paradoxically, one of the most important steps in rebuilding my confidence after being ghosted was learning to embrace vulnerability. After Elias disappeared, I was tempted to shut down, to build walls around my heart, to protect myself from future pain. But I realized that that would be a mistake. Vulnerability is essential for building meaningful connections. I had always been afraid of being vulnerable, of showing my true self to others. I was afraid of being judged, of being rejected, of being hurt. But I realized that those fears were holding me back from experiencing true intimacy and connection. I started to practice vulnerability in my relationships, sharing my thoughts, feelings, and experiences with the people I trusted. I opened up about my fears, my insecurities, and my past traumas. I allowed myself to be seen, to be heard, and to be accepted for who I am, flaws and all. To my surprise, I found that vulnerability wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. In fact, it was incredibly liberating. It allowed me to connect with people on a deeper level, to build stronger, more authentic relationships. I discovered that when I allowed myself to be vulnerable, I also gave others permission to be vulnerable with me. Embracing vulnerability wasn't about being reckless or naive. It was about being courageous, about taking risks, and about trusting that the people who truly cared about me would accept me for who I am, even with my imperfections. The fifth step, finding purpose. After the great ghosting, I felt like I had lost my purpose. I had been so focused on finding love, on building a relationship, on creating a future with someone else, that I had neglected my own dreams and goals. I had allowed my identity to become wrapped up in my relationship, so when that relationship ended, I felt like I had lost myself. I realized that I needed to find a new purpose, something that would give my life meaning and direction. I started to explore different interests and passions, trying new things and seeing what resonated with me. I volunteered at a local animal shelter, helping to care for abandoned and neglected animals. I took a pottery class, learning to create beautiful and functional objects out of clay. I joined a community garden, growing my own vegetables and herbs. I also started to focus on my career. I had been feeling stuck in my job for years, but I had been too afraid to make a change. After the ghosting, I realized that I couldn't afford to waste any more time doing something that didn't fulfill me. I started to look for new opportunities, networking with people in my industry and updating my resume. I even started my own freelance business, offering graphic design services to small businesses and entrepreneurs. Finding purpose wasn't about discovering some grand, earth-shattering mission. It was about finding small, meaningful ways to contribute to the world and to make a difference in the lives of others. It was about pursuing my passions, developing my talents, and living a life that felt authentic and fulfilling. It took time, effort, and a whole lot of self-compassion, but eventually, I emerged from the darkness of the great ghosting a stronger, more resilient, and more self-aware woman. I learned that my worth wasn't dependent on someone else's approval, that my happiness wasn't contingent on finding a partner, and that my life was full of potential, even without a romantic relationship. I never did hear from Elias again. He remained a ghost, a fleeting memory in the landscape of my life. But I'm okay with that, because I know that I'm worthy of love, respect, and happiness. And I'm not going to let anyone, not even a ghost, take that away from me. Years later, I even found myself looking back on that experience with a strange sense of gratitude. It was a painful and challenging time, but it ultimately led me to a deeper understanding of myself, a greater appreciation for my own strength, and a more profound sense of purpose. It shattered my confidence, yes, but it also gave me the opportunity to rebuild it, stronger and more resilient than ever before. And for that, I am truly grateful. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever been ghosted, abandoned, or made to feel like you weren't enough, please remember, it says more about them than it ever will about you. You are worthy, you are enough, and you deserve to be seen, heard, and loved for exactly who you are. If this story resonated with you, I invite you to leave a comment and share your experience. Because healing begins when we know we're not alone. And if you're on your own path of recovery, take it one small step at a time. You've got this. Until next time, take care of your heart and never stop choosing yourself.